Hi, I'm Audrey Hay, and I've been living here for 25 years and I love it. We bought this land in 1986. My husband and I were looking for a place to grow trees, and this seemed a good spot. It's between Helensville and Dairy Flat, right in the middle of the island. It's currently in the middle of a lot of lifestyle blocks, but in 1986 there was still a few farms around. This was the biggest farm, 200 acres, and it had been a runoff sheep property, and so there was not much in the way of fences or troughs or anything, because the sheep just went from one end of the farm to the other. The first thing we did was to make a general plan as to what we thought we were going to do with it. We were very keen on trees, but we realised there was a lot of very good grazing here. So we drew up a plan, and the first thing was to actually fence off the gullies. And you can see there's 3 quite big gullies down here. When we bought the place, there was actually cattle on it, and they were just tramping right through the gullies, making the most terrible mess. They were also tramping right into the dams. And then we thought, well, we'll plant trees. That was the idea. But we will keep as much land as we can that's good grazing land. And so the idea was that anything that was too steep for a tractor or the top dressing trucks was going to be planted. So that was the first idea. And also we knew that this land was good grazing land, but it never had any trees on it. When we bought it, it had 2 shelter belts, one at the bottom there and one at the far side there, very old shelter belts, which had to come out eventually. My husband was very keen on Diane Lucas's idea of attractive plantings. He didn't want straight lines, he didn't want blocks. So that meant that we couldn't have straight fences like this coming down the gullies. So that was electric fencing. Well, that was great, except that it's a pain in the neck to actually try and keep maintained. It's always going off and always having problems with stock going through. But in the end, we decided we just put the 2 wires in, and it was simple, it was quick, it was cheap, and it looked attractive when it was done. We have got some blocks. We've got the pines up there, and they are just a cash crop. But the rest of the trees that we've planted are alternative species, and that was what we were interested in. And it's for the look of the place as well as their usefulness, because they're all different foliages. And so you can see from the different colours, we've got blackwoods down here. We had a nurse crop of poplars, and that was just beautiful. That was little gold splashes right through them. They've all gone. We've got eucalypts over there, another different colour foliage. Redwoods down there, and a lot of cypresses further over. But the 3 gullies are all blackwoods, and they're going to be ready in probably 10, 12 years, and they will be harvested individually, and I hope that we'll get some really, really good trees out of that. This is a particularly good example of a sheltered paddock. There were no trees at all here when we came, so we've got the blackwoods over here, planted originally with poplars, and they're providing a huge amount of shelter. There's a big stream that comes up from the top, and it flows very fast in the middle of winter. On the other side we've got the poplars, and they're taking the wind from the northeast away. But as you can see, we've got in here cows just about to calf, and they'll have a very sheltered place for their calves to be born. Further up here we've got a block of natives which we put around the dam, and also some lusitanicas, and then another lot of poplars up that gully. So all those paddocks on the hills had no shelter, so they've got a shelter belt right up to the top of poplars, and in the next valley exactly the same. So there's a huge amount of shelter, but there's a lot of wood here too, and these blackwoods will produce huge amounts of wood eventually. The poplars we probably won't mill. I'm not sure about that. They haven't been pruned. The poplars up here have been pruned, and they could be milled later on. But also the poplars are very good for feed in the summer. So if we did run short of feed, which we haven't ever, we could start pruning the poplars in the summer, and the cows would be very pleased to have poplars, nice fresh green stuff to eat. If we were to do it again, would we do it any differently? Well, I think possibly if we could, we would not have had cows on the property, but it seemed the easiest option at the time because of the electric fencing. Cows can do such a lot of damage once they've got through the fences, and we have had that problem. I had a lot of larches, English larches, planted way over there, and one day the power went off, and the cows know immediately when the power's off, and they were through, and they ate them all right down to nothing. That was the end of them. So ideally, if you could, of course, proper fences and sheep would be the answer, but cows is what we've got, and we've just had to muddle through with them. For farm forestry, I think I've learnt an enormous amount. We've been to so many field days. Every field day somebody tells the story of what they did wrong, and I think that we all appreciate that it's not as easy as it looks. You just plant a tree and it grows. No, you've got to attend to it all the time. You can't just leave it and think, oh, I'll prune it in 6 months' time when I've got more time. No, it's got to be done. Everything's got to be pruned up to time, and we were able to do that because my husband managed to get some young boys in the school holidays to help him, so that was a great help. Otherwise I don't think we'd have been able to do it. And so we learned a lot from other people's mistakes, but a lot of it was experimentation. And the poplars amongst the blackwoods, that was an experiment which we decided on. A lot of people have tried other things amongst the blackwoods as a nurse crop. The poplars turned out, I think, very, very good, because they lost their leaves in the winter and gave the blackwoods a bit more light to grow. This was a small paddock we couldn't do anything with. It was cut off by the race, so we planted 300 redwoods, and they were that high when we put them in, and they were immediately covered with long grass, and I thought we'd lost them for good. We found them all, stepped them out, released them, and then they started to grow, and they have just grown so amazingly quick that they're just a delight. They have been thinned. I didn't really want them to be thinned because I love them so much, but they had to be thinned, so they've had one thinning, and that's all they're going to have. They sort of prune themselves. We did prune them to start with very early, but they don't really need pruning, and they just grow and are beautiful and don't seem to get any diseases. And one day they will be a wonderful source of timber. The Americans are already short of redwoods, so if you're interested in growing a really beautiful tree, you can't go past the redwoods. The plan was followed, mostly from its original conception it was followed, but we had a slight hiccup when my son fenced off the dam up there. We asked him to fence it off. It's a lovely big dam up there with a big spring, and he fenced it off, but he fenced off about 4 acres around the dam, and my husband said, "What on earth did you do that for? I mean, what are we going to use that bit of land for?" And then he said, "Oh, well, okay, we'll try planting natives." So he planted by himself, actually thousands of natives in knee-high kikuyu. It was an absolute mad idea, but he'd sprayed all his pots first, and he was very good at going back and release spraying, and the first year we managed to lose probably 2/3 of the plants because we didn't put high enough stakes in. So we kept on planting, and now we have a marvellous area of native bush with very big kauris, and it's been coveted to the Kiwi2 Trust, so it will not ever be allowed to be cut down, and we're thrilled with it. So it was a good idea. We've got moorporks, we've got all sorts of native birds in there. Unfortunately, no pigeons. I'm trying to find somebody who's going to donate me some pigeons. But there's every other bird in there, and the trees are looking just wonderful. So it's a lovely walk through the native bush in there, so that was exciting. The future, well, I don't know what lies ahead. My children are interested in the fact that I've got the trees here, and they really like them, but it's a matter of, at the moment, of hanging on and seeing if we can improve the marketing values of all these trees. And we've got another 10 years to before they're going to go. I just really enjoy the fact that we have improved this bit of land, which was so bare and so boring when we got it. It was really just, as I said, a runoff, and all of the previous farmer was interested in was grass. And the grass was for the animals, and that was it. But I think animals need a lot more than grass. They need shelter, and the trees have provided the shelter, and they've also provided an income for somebody who wants to buy the property and use the trees. And of course they will be cut down and then they will be replanted. So it'll just keep on going, I hope, forever.